Viridian, The Green Guide, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 96, Blank. Kotsky really hated hospitals. It was understandable. Everyone hated hospitals. The only problem was that Recovery Girl had figured that out, and that old hag had gotten together with his old hag and decided that he needed an extra day of boredom to make sure the healing sticks. Bullshit. They just wanted to punish him so he wouldn't get hurt as bad next time. It was working, but still. To make things even worse, because Kotsky would never admit that it was better, the old hag had somehow gotten into his phone and gone through his contacts to invite his classmates to visit him. It was embarrassing and loud considering that the entire extrovert crew had shown up. So now he was stuck with Kirishima, Mina, Sero, and even Kaminari, who had gotten released yesterday, crowded around the foot of his bed, talking over one another as they tried to make him feel better or something. It was annoying and sweet at the same time. Shinso had gotten the invite too, but he didn't know anyone else, so he'd retreated into the corner. Kotsky had been half concerned about him feeling left out until he'd caught Shinso smirking at his predicament with absolutely zero sympathy. He should try being trapped by a bunch of high-energy dimwits and see how well he liked it, the a-hole. I'm surprised the doctors haven't thrown you extras out yet, Kotsky griped. Aren't hospitals supposed to be about recovery and rest? You can't recover on your own, Bakabro. Kirishima pouted. You gotta have friends so you don't get too lonely. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Mina's grin couldn't spell out anything good as she turned to them. I wanted to introduce you guys to my uncle-ish. He's here in the hospital too, so we can go visit him. Oh no. She was totally talking about Ogawa, wasn't she? What the? Pinky! Kotsky scowled. It's bad enough that I have to deal with all of you. What makes you think he wants to? Oh, you know you love us. Mina stuck out her tongue. I asked him yesterday, and he said he was totally down to meet everyone. Kotsky groaned. He'd already lost this fight, hadn't he? He couldn't just roll over, though, so he had to at least try to fight back. Isn't there the whole privacy issue and all that? Mina shrugged. We're all hero students. Well, except for Mr. Gucci Eyebags over there. But he seems cool enough, and he wouldn't be here if you didn't trust him, so it's probably fine. Come on, let's go. She started toward the door, and the rest of them had no choice but to follow along, like little lost ducklings. Kotsky groaned as he heaved himself from the bed. There was still a little twinge of pain in his legs, but Recovery Girl had done her magic well, and he didn't have to use a stupid wheelchair this time, which would have been even worse. He could only imagine the chaos that would be happening right now if he had to trust these morons to wheel him around. And that chaos involved a substantial amount of running into walls. Yeah, walking was definitely the safer option. Wait! Kaminari stumbled slightly as he jogged to catch up with Mina. Where are we going? Kotsky rolled his eyes. To visit a friend of mine that got possessed by her aunt. The others stopped walking, and there was a moment of shocked silence before Shinso let out a low whistle. Wow, Bakugo, no wonder everyone thinks you're a cryptid. Kotsky glared at him. You know you don't actually have to tag along, right? It's not like Raccoon Eyes is scary enough to force you. Oh no, Shinso grinned. This is way too entertaining to pass up. I'm coming. Well, I mean, glad to have you, but, Sero looked lost as he glanced around. I'm still confused about how the spirit of Mina's aunt possessed someone. It's not her spirit. Mina rolled her eyes and started walking again. It's more like her quirk. And don't be so rude, Blasty. Auntie Di isn't possessing him or anything creepy like that. Or, well, I mean, it's kind of creepy, but only because some mad scientist villains gave him her quirk. And now, well, it's kind of hard to explain. It's like her ghost is living in his head. Kaminari's eyes were impossibly wide. A part of her stayed with the quirk and is a part of him now. Yeah! Mina looked impressed. Wow, Kaminari, I can't even explain it that well. How is it fair that you come in and describe it perfectly? You haven't even met him yet. Kaminari shrugged awkwardly. I guess I'm just cool like that. Kotsky snorted. Yeah, right, like any of you extras are actually cool, but whatever. That'll probably just make him like you more. Dinky's mind was racing as Mina led him through the hospital. He could tell that Kirishima, Sero, and that new kid that Bakugo had introduced them to were still skeptical about the whole villains gave this guy another quirk thing, but everyone else was just going along with it, so they hadn't said anything. Denki, however, was just trying to decide whether he was nervous or excited. If he was connecting the dots right, then that meant that Mina's kinda sorta uncle was like him. Sure, One for All was probably a completely different beast, and if Izuku was right about all the side effects of quirk transfers, then this guy was probably in for a pretty bumpy ride. But even without meeting the guy, Denki could feel this weird sort of kinship with him. Not that he'd be able to say anything about it, considering that One for All was supposed to be a secret, but still, it was super cool. Mina and Bakugo obviously knew their way because they led them through the winding hallways without any hesitation, stopping at a door that looked just like every other one. Bakugo pounded on the door a few times before slamming it open. Oi! Tentacle freak, are you crazy? Why in the world would you sign up to meet a bunch of annoying extras? Maybe because I'm not a misanthrope? The guy on the bed was grinning as they filed into the room, and Denki could see why Bakugo had called him Tentacle Freak. His hair was made out of thick tentacles that were almost black with hints of green and purple that seemed to shift in the light and were long enough to reach almost to his shoulder blades. The dark tentacles contrasted starkly with the white electrodes that were glued to his head alongside all the other medical equipment. When the guy saw them, he turned away from Bakugo and gave them a bright smile. Hey, you guys must be Kachan's friends. I'm glad he hasn't scared everyone away with his I'm so angry and antisocial act yet. Oi! Bakugo hit him in the arm. Stop talking about me like I'm not right here. Extras, meet Ogawa. Ogawa, meet the extras. You must have the patience of a saint. Sero teased. How did you even get him to admit you were friends? Ogawa glanced around the room before leaning forward conspiratorially. I bribed him with ice cream and good feelings. They all laughed as Bakugo glared. I hate all of you. So, how does any of this work? Sero asked. You're like Mina's uncle, aunt thing? Ogawa smiled sheepishly. Yeah? I mean, kinda. It's complicated, but she's excited too. Sounds cool, Kirishima said. So, Mina's aunt's just there? Ogawa shrugged. Basically, yeah. It's kind of a trippy feeling, but I've got two other people's quirks, and a part of them came along for the ride, so they're just here, experiencing everything right alongside me. Wait, all the time? Denki's eyebrows shot up. You don't, have to be super calm or anything? Ogawa frowned thoughtfully. No, they're just a program running in the background, I guess is a good way to describe it. It's super weird, Mina said cheerfully, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I just get a fun bonus uncle. And I get an extra headache, Bakugo rolled his eyes. Seriously, knowing you guys separately was enough of a migraine. Ah, Ogawa laughed. Don't be like that, Kachan. I know you're secretly... Suddenly, his face went blank, and Denki felt a creeping feeling of wrongness crawl down his spine as the room went silent. He looked at Bakugo and Mina, but they looked just as confused as he felt, so this was apparently not part of their normal weirdness. After a moment, Bakugo turned to Shinso. Did you? Shinso shook his head frantically. No! I mean, I know how this looks, but I didn't even say anything to him. So I couldn't have I didn't do anything to him. I swear. Calm down, eyebags. I wasn't accusing you or anything, Bakugo growled and turned back to Ogawa. But if you didn't brainwash him, then what's going on? A brainwashing quirk would explain the sudden blankness, and he knew Izuku would be freaking out over such a cool quirk. But if it weren't for the fact that everyone else was freaking out, Denki would have just assumed that Ogawa had gone to the headspace to talk to his vestiges. That didn't make any sense, though, because he said he didn't have to be in the headspace to interact with his quirk's past holders like Denki did, which was another thing Izuku would probably freak out over. This was all so confusing. Kirishima glanced at them. Maybe we should call the doctor. That sounds like a great plan. Mina huffed in relief before slamming the call button. Okay, but, what's he doing now? They all took a step back as Ogawa stood up and started messing with some things on the medical machines beside him. That didn't seem like the safest thing to do, and it just felt so wrong, especially because his facial expression still hadn't changed from the sullen blankness he'd slipped into a moment ago. It was just plain creepy. Ogawa, buddy. Kirishima reached a hand out to grab his shoulder. Is something wrong? Maybe you should let the doctors do that? Kirishima yelped and hardened his skin as Ogawa's tentacles suddenly extended and slammed him into the wall behind him. Denki gulped and activated his quirks, letting the electricity build beneath his skin as he shifted into a fighting stance. What was going on? The guy had been so nice. Were they really going to have to fight him? And to make it even worse, he still had that creepy blank expression on his face. It was just wrong. The door slammed open and a small team of doctors and nurses came rushing in. Everybody, stand back. He can get confrontational when he's like this. We're going to have to sedate him. What? Like what? Bakugo growled. What the hell is going on? Instead of answering, the doctor took out a needle and jabbed it into the tentacle that had reached for him as soon as he walked in. Ogawa had turned to him, blank-faced, but looked ready for a fight. But he didn't get the chance before his eyes drooped and he started to sway. Bakugo and Mina ran to catch him as he collapsed. The doctor wiped his forehead. Well, it looks like we're actually getting good at that. We were hoping this one was just a blip on the brain scanner, but I guess not. What even was that? Mina sounded panicked. He just wasn't there anymore. Has this happened before? Unfortunately, yes, the doctor sighed. It started a few days ago, and we're not sure exactly what's happening. Hence, the brain scanner. Is it just seizures or something? Sarah freaked out. But, that doesn't look like seizures. The doctor shook his head. There's still so much we don't know about the experiments he went through, but we assume that since he was meant to be a weapon, there must have been some measures put in place to control him. The first few times it happened, we did think it was seizures because he just sat there and he looked almost like a robot awaiting orders. I'm sure you saw that face. Denki looked around at the others who were also nodding hesitantly. That seemed like a good way to describe the blankness before he'd started moving, but they hadn't given him any orders. So who had? The doctor frowned as he continued. It wasn't until yesterday afternoon, when he started trying to harm himself, that we realized it wasn't just a side effect of the experiments, hence the sedation. Thankfully, it appears that the past users of his quirks are unaffected by the quirk and have been able to snap him out of it with considerable effort. It's been happening more frequently as well, but there's not much we can do for him before we figure out how to sever whatever quirk connection the villain factory is using to control him. Rest assured that we're doing the best we can, but for the moment, our main focus is to keep him from following through on what we think the villains are ordering him to do. Shinso raised an eyebrow. Which is? Danke had a sinking feeling that he already knew as the doctor hesitated, an awkward look on his face as he searched for the right words. But it was Bakugo that said what they were all thinking. They want him to off himself to tie off loose ends. The doctor sighed heavily. You should all go. The sedative we gave him is extremely potent, so he'll be out for at least the next hour. But if things keep going the way they are, we might have to consider keeping him sedated until we can break the villain's control. There was nothing else to say as they all trudged out of the room and followed Bakugo back to his room. Danke's brain raced with all the new information and tried to make it fit any sort of order so that they could actually be coherent when he told Izuku about it. There was so much more going on than he understood. Just how much information was he missing? End of chapter.